Hi there, welcome back to World Lung Cancer Day 2020, LCFA's social media takeover. We are here today talking to lung cancer patients. Sorry, it's been kind of a long day, but we've been here today talking to lung cancer patients about living with lung cancer, about the tremendous need for research and the amazing things that research is doing. But while lung cancer is one of the deadliest cancers, and in fact kills more people than breast, prostate, and colon together, it is one of the least funded cancers at the federal level. So organizations like Lung Cancer Foundation of America are so very important because they actually raise funds and donate the money to provide grants for young investigators who can make such a difference. We've had more advances in the past 5 years than we've had in the past 20 years. And the people we've been talking to today, they are just the best. They're part of our LCFA Speakers Bureau. And today we're going to talk with Lisa Goldman. Lisa, how are you?
Hi, Diane. I'm doing great.
I want to tell you, I'm so excited about this segment. This is going to be so much fun. I know we're starting a little late, so I don't want you to feel rushed. We will work that out on our end. But I want to just kind of get right into this. Tell us a little bit about your story.
Okay. So in 2013, actually, I started not feeling so great, having this persistent cough and a little bit of wheezing, which I'd never experienced before. I went to my doctor, and you've probably heard this story from other patients throughout today, but I got the whole run around of maybe it's asthma, maybe it's allergies, maybe it's bronchitis, and they put
diagnosed. Isn't that the word of the day? I mean, yes.
So that went on for a few months until January of 2014, and finally I went to see a pulmonologist who had me get a CT, and I was quickly routed to a bronchoscopy and diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer out of the blue. And then a few months later discovered I tested positive for a genomic marker called ROS1. So That's the very quick story. There's lots of details there. But since then, so I did about 8 months of intensive chemotherapy. And when that stopped working, my ROS1 marker allowed me to go onto a targeted therapy. And I've been just incredibly, incredibly lucky that I've been on my targeted therapy ever since August of 2014. So
that's great. And is it a pill? Do you take a pill?
It's a pill I take twice a day, and it wasn't even FDA approved for my mutation when I first started taking it. So I was really sort of on the front end of the wave of research there, but now it's kind of so old hat that they've switched to some other frontline meds, but it's been working for me, so I'm sticking with it.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely. Now, today you're going to show us a little bit about living with lung cancer, and you're going to make me really hungry. I'm starving. And now you're going to make this beautiful challah bread.
Yeah.
So let's do it.
So we have some pictures of what it's going to look like when it's done. But what I've done here is I've prepared the dough ahead of time, so it's all ready to braid. I've already
made here. I just want you to know. On top of that, I've been on a low carb diet for I think since like February. I could just like fall face first into that. It's so beautiful.
Oh, it's irresistible when you hear it. I mean, smell it baking in the oven.
Oh, but, sure. Yeah.
When I told my daughter I was doing this for living with lung cancer, she said, "Shouldn't you just be showing yourself watching some Netflix?" But I don't bake challah all the time, but I bake it often enough that I know how to do it.
That's very good.
So I divided the dough into four balls, and then I just roll it out into these strands so I can braid it. So the fancy thing here is you can braid challah with just 3 strands, like a regular braid.
Like a hair braid almost, right?
Yeah, exactly. But I do it with 4 strands, and it's very similar to making a regular braid. It's just it's you just take it one step further. So I'm going to
you're a lawyer and a Pilates instructor, and so you took this to the next level, obviously.
Right. The next logical step is staying home and baking challah bread. So
with four strand challah bread, not
yes,
4 strand.
So it's like weaving. So you take your 4 strands and you just pinch them together at the top and just kind of tuck it under so it looks nice and neat. And then you just weave it. I don't know how well you all can see this, but you take the leftmost strand. Well, I'm left-handed.
Now, can I ask you a question? When you make the dough, do you have to let it rise and do all that as well?
Yeah. You definitely, it's not a hard process, but it's a long one. It takes about, 3 hours of steps of letting it rest for an hour in between and things. So yeah, so I definitely started this process a long time ago. So you just go over, under, and then that leftmost strand ends up on the right. And then you do it again. You take the leftmost strand, you go over, and then under, and then over, and then it ends up on the right.
Oh, it looks beautiful.
And it's so impressive at the end, but it's really something that, What's that? Oh, I can't hear you. I don't know if you can hear me.
Everything from it. There we go. We're back. Okay. When you're doing the braid, is the braid a tight braid or is it a loose braid?
It's not too tight because I don't want to tear the dough.
Right.
So you kind of hold it gently and just place it over and then under and then over. And I don't know if you can see.
Look at that. It's beautiful.
So I can do like a couple more here. And then when it gets too short at the end, I just sort of pinch it together again, tuck it under, and then you have your braided challah dough.
Beautiful.
And
absolutely gorgeous.
Then I'm going to set it aside for a bit, and then we're going to take the egg wash.
Right.
And brush that over the top, and then sprinkle some poppy seeds or sesame seeds.
People are saying, can you send me one to taste? I mean, everybody's like, I'm drooling.
It's fun. It's satisfying.
I love that. That is so much fun. And Sarah, can we see the picture of the finished product again? Because it's so beautiful. There it is. Oh, look at that. How long do you cook it for?
So once it goes in the oven, so I'm going to let it rise again for about 30 to 60 minutes. And then I bake it for about 45, I think it is.
All right. That's very fun. Now with your challah bread, you're going to make us a special couscous salad. Is that right? An Israeli salad?
An Israeli salad. Now, I don't have couscous for it today.
Okay, I have bad information. Sometimes that happens. It's late in the day. What can I say? But we're going to let that slide.
So I'm going to show you. So an Israeli salad is pretty simple. It can be modified to taste. So my Israeli salad will have cucumbers, tomatoes, some red onion, some parsley, and some spices and lemon juice and olive oil. So it's really pretty basic, but it's just nice and refreshing. So normally, like in order to justify just hunks of fresh challah out of
you're kind of like working that around. Yep.
Right. I have a nice light Israeli salad. I might bring out some hummus. And then I call that a meal.
I love that. That's a fabulous meal. And a lot of your vegetables come from your garden. Is that right?
They do. Yeah. So I just picked this cucumber this morning.
Wow.
And I think we have a little video of me doing that.
Your husband went out with you and took a great video. So can you hang on for a second? Because I think we're going to put that video up and watch you in action. Here we go. I'm not hearing anything, Sarah, just so you know. We're checking that as we speak. Hold on one second. We're going to pull up that. Okay. So tell me what do you grow in your garden while Sarah's checking on the technical issues?
Yeah. We are growing right now. Well, we have a ton of fruit trees, but that's not relevant to the salad. But we have a ton of pluots and plums and apricots and nectarines and stuff. So we've been enjoying all that. And then in the garden, we're growing cucumbers and tomatoes, some herbs, some jalapeno peppers and other peppers.
Nice. Oh, and you know what? I think we had the video back up. So let's see you doing your thing this morning.
Hi, everybody. We are going out to my garden to see if I have any cucumbers or tomatoes or anything else to pick, because I'm going to make an Israeli salad to go with the challah. So we've been having a bit of an issue. It's an organic garden, and some critters have been enjoying our harvest before we can get to it. So I'm not super optimistic, but let's see what we've got. All right.
Oh, Luana Leak Best says it looks delicious.
Oh. Thanks, Luana.
And you're in San Francisco, right?
A bit wonky.
We're about 45 minutes south of San Francisco.
I'm not sure it's going to improve with time.
Very good for gardening weather.
Absolutely.
Even though I don't really know what I'm doing.
It looks like you're doing pretty well with what you're picking there. Holy moly, look at those beautiful vegetables.
This cucumber. No further comments. Okay.
Whoa, look at all that.
We've got these gorgeous purple cherry tomatoes, but cherry tomatoes aren't great for Israeli salad. Cherry tomatoes are best for doing this. See, you find a nice ripe one, pick it.
Ooh, there you go. Eating straight from the garden. You gotta love that. Nothing tastes better.
Those cherry tomatoes are so sweet.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, look at that guy.
The critter did.
That's
Gross.
What is that?
Well,
Is
we
that?
might just have
an Armenian cucumber. We already just sliced it up and ate it, but somebody had taken a bite out of it. We had to.
My husband's Armenian. We have those in the fridge.
Look at this.
Oh.
Look at this. I'm feeding rats.
Uh-oh.
Okay, well, I think, hello, I'm over here. I think we could put a jalapeno in our salad.
Ooh, that sounds good. Get a little kick.
Yeah, I could do. I didn't.
I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to run over to the farmer's market, and I will be back with some tomatoes grown by professionals who don't feed the rats or squirrels or whoever is eating all this. See you in a minute.
I call them mice. I don't know. Just go with the mouse thing. It's just a little easier. Anyway, okay. So let's put this salad together.
Yeah. So we have the cucumber. I just take off the edges of it, and then dice it up. And pretty small is better. I generally find, and you want to take out that kind of middle part with all the seeds, because that just doesn't taste as good. So I trim that out. And
I can tell you've done this a time or two. You're pretty fast.
I have my next career in food TV or whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you just dice up the cucumber and put that in the bowl, and
it's so refreshing, that fresh cucumber. When you eat it, I just love that.
It is. So, and I prepared some in advance. So this is an eyeball recipe. Like, I don't measure. It's about equal.
Oh, good. Because I thought you were going to put eyeballs in it for a minute.
I don't think that's kosher.
I was like, well, that's new. I haven't heard that one before. What kind of eyeballs are you using?
No eyeballs.
Right. At this time of the day, I get a little punchy.
So it's really just about equal parts cucumber. Then I add in some of my tomato, and some of it I chopped in advance. So I just
Yum.
eyeball the
And it's so pretty with the green and the red. I love that.
Yep. And then I dice up a little bit of red onion if people tolerate. Some people don't like red onion, some do. So got to know your audience, but dice up
Mary
a little.
Conneran says she picks her cherry tomatoes the same way you pick yours.
Yeah.
Throw the ones back to the mice that they've already gotten into.
Yeah.
Or as my mom tried to grow them in Tucson, and the birds ate every last one of them. Took a bite out of every one.
It's so frustrating. It's like, if you just take a few and eat them entirely, I'm happy to share. But the one bite out of every single one,
Exactly.
That's not fair.
It's totally unfair.
So we've got the cucumbers, the tomatoes, a little bit of red onion, some diced up parsley.
Nice.
And then squeeze of lemon from my garden.
Nice.
Without the seeds, hopefully. And, whoops. A drizzle of olive oil.
Love it.
And then a little salt. And then the secret is that really makes it Israeli salad is something called za'atar. It's a spice. It can be a little tough to find out here, although they carry it at Penzies, if you guys know that spice.
Well, and where I'm at, there's a Mediterranean market. That's where we buy ours. And,
okay.
And we freeze it. So we buy enough of it that we freeze it and then use it as needed.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it freezes really well.
Yeah. So then I just take, I don't know, like, again, this is eyeballing it, but that's about a tablespoon. I sprinkle it into the salad. That's what gives it its sort of unique flavor, or part of the dressing, I guess. And you just stir it together.
Oh, that looks so good.
And you've got
there. Yay! We love it.
Yeah.
It's great.
Goes great with the challah or anything, really. I mean, it's just a salad. You can have people add, if you want to make it more of a full meal, I've added chickpeas into it.
Absolutely.
So you can do that, or I'm vegetarian, so I would do that, but I suppose you could put it on the side of any kind of meat or whatever you want.
Really good with chicken or fish. Really, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, that's gorgeous. Well, thank you. And it was so easy and fast.
Yeah, super easy.
Right? That's the thing. And then you have your wonderful challah bread, and I'm sure you'll eat it right out of the. I would eat it right out.
Totally.
Anyway, so tell me, Lisa, what does lung cancer research mean to you? Why is it important to you?
Well, I mean, as you can see, you wouldn't know from seeing me on the street that I have stage 4 lung cancer and was told I wouldn't survive out the year 2014. I mean, I have such a great quality life. I'm raising my kids. I exercise every day. I do my crafts. I am helping around the house. I have some side effects I deal with, but for the most part, I am living a really wonderful life. So it's not just that I've survived, but I have such a good quality of life on this targeted therapy, and that's 100% due to research. So I couldn't be more grateful and supportive of our lung cancer researchers.
And you're a great advocate. And one of the things that you're so good at is blogging. And early this morning, you had a Twitter chat on blogging. But if anyone's interested in blogging, I really encourage them to go back to the Twitter chat this morning on LCFA. And Lisa will be checking in on that. But if you have any questions to ask her, would it be okay if they can comment and ask you some questions on Twitter? Because your blog has been picked up by some major publications, and we look forward to reading your blog every time it comes out because you're just such a beautiful writer. One of the questions I wanted to ask you about the blog real quick is when you blog, do you just like freestyle, or do you have a theme or do you go back and edit? How do you do that?
So I'm much too neurotic to do sort of stream of consciousness. Almost all my blogs have been, edited multiple times. And there's something that'll prompt it. So I'm not a journaler. I don't write every day, but so something will happen that'll trigger some thought process. I'll mull it over for a few days, decide I want to write on it. draft it out and then edit it. Usually my husband or a friend will take a look at it before I hit publish. So I'm pretty careful about that. I know that's not the style of all bloggers, but that's me.
And where can people find your blog?
So it's at lisa.ericgoldman.org. That's ericgoldman.org. And if you just Google me, like if you just Google Lisa Goldman and lung cancer, it'll probably come up. And the name of the blog is actually called Every Breath I Take. So you could also Google Every Breath I Take, and Lisa Goldman should be able to find it.
No, if you have any interest in this topic, you have to read her blog. It's just fabulous. It's really, really good. So thank you so much. I'm not going to thank you because I'm so hungry. That looked so good. AJ Patel was on there saying how great it looked. We had some other people who were putting comments on Facebook. So thank you everybody who's commenting on Facebook, and thank you Lisa for putting this together. It was great and great fun. And I know what I'm having for dinner tonight. I'm off the diet tonight. That's it. We're done.
Well, good to see you. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thanks. You have a wonderful day. To donate. We have met so many wonderful people. And here is Kim Norris, who is the founder, who just popped right into my feed. I love that. How are you, Kim?
I am good. How are you, Diane? Are you tired?
No. Why would I be tired? You're only the person I spoke to today. No, actually, you don't get tired when you're doing something that's so inspirational and so much fun and for such a good cause. So no, yeah. I'm not tired. I could go hours more. But until I go hours more, we've got some other people that are joining us today. And this is, remember, the LCFA World Lung Cancer Day social media takeover. There is Jim Baranski, who is the CEO, executive director. Kim Norris is the founder, and Dr. David Carbone. Hi, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Yeah, so Dr. Carbone, I'm going to read this so that I get it right, but you're a member of our scientific advisory board, and you're from The Ohio State University, correct? And
that's right.
One of our favorite people to come and talk to the Speakers Bureau members. You come out and you educate us and you give us the latest, and more than anything, you are one of the people who gives us more hope than anyone I know because of the way that you help and you explain. So that's great. So we're going to talk today about why LCFA, on the guidance from the Scientific Advisory Board, has decided to give a smaller number of larger grants as opposed to a larger number of smaller grants. And Kim, I want to start with you as to what's the reasoning behind that? What's the strategy?
Well, actually, I might shortly defer to David Carbone on this one, because when LCFA was started, I don't know, 12 years ago or so, it took a couple of years before we had enough money to give our first grant. Our primary mission was always to fund research, lung cancer research. But when we first had enough money to give our first grant, we turned to our scientific advisory board, which David at the time was the chair of, and we said, okay, we have this money, now how do we spend it? How do we give it away to the best and the brightest?
Right.
We really weren't focused on giving it to a particular institution. We wanted to fund whoever was doing the best work in the field. And David, I remember a conversation we had in the Scientific Advisory Board with you in particular, speaking up about, rather than giving a lot of smaller grants, say $50,000 grants to a lot of people, that we could make a bigger impact in the world of lung cancer research if we gave fewer grants but larger grants. And the grants that we give for the young investigators are $200,000 over 2 years. And back then, it was really critical that we try to attract the best and the brightest into lung cancer, because back then lung cancer research was not the cool place to be.
Right.
And young researchers were going to other fields. So we were focused on what can we do to attract the best and the brightest and create that next generation of researchers.
So, Dr.
David?
Carbone, talk a little bit about the thought process behind all of that.
Well, Kim's hit it right on the head. I think it's really important to making progress in treating this disease to get the best science applied to lung cancer. Historically, other cancers have gotten more funding per capita, and lung cancer was relatively ignored. And the best scientists would look at that landscape and they'd go and study breast cancer or colon cancer or prostate cancer. And I really advocated for making impactful grants, not just because the 200,000 is enough money to really make a difference and find something significant, but it also attracts the best people to apply. And I think for both of those reasons, the LCFA has been extremely successful in attracting some amazing young people into lung cancer, and hopefully they'll stay there and they'll be the next generation of researchers to find the next therapy for Ivy or for Lisa or some of the other patients we've heard from today.
Yeah, in fact, at 4:00, we're going to, or in the next half hour, depending on where you're watching us, we're going to meet some of those young investigators, and they're amazing. Jim, how many grants have been given so far?
He's muted.
Jim, you're muted. Jim,
You're muted.
there you go. Oh, wait. Okay, I think you and Sarah are playing the mute game. There you go.
No. I'm just talking to Mr. Mute. And I just told Mr. Mute that we contributed over $4 million with the help of some of our partners, like ISLC and to David and Kim's point, it's really all about, these young investigators, air quote, researchers, they're like startups, so we're hopefully helping to incubate their research, which will then add momentum to follow-on dollars, which we've seen time and time again.
Absolutely. Kim, do you want to talk about some of the really cool research that's going on right now?
Oh boy, I am so blown away by the type and the kind of research that we have funded. And again, you're going to hear more about it in the next half hour. But for example, one of our researchers, and you'll hear more from her, is researching why young women, never smokers, seem to be getting lung cancer.
Yeah.
That's a really critical question that a lot of people, and you've seen today how many young women have been on today.
Yes.
So that is an issue. We have another one we have a couple actually that have been researching the role of what we call the microbiome. That's the bacteria and fungi in your body, and how that impacts immunotherapy treatments. There's some indication that there is a direct impact between the effectiveness of immunotherapy and the microbiome.
And Kim, will you just real quickly explain immunotherapy?
Immunotherapy is teaching your own immune system how to go after the cancer. So for some people, their immune system recognizes cancer as something bad and goes after it. For other people, for some reason, their immune system looks at the cancer and the cancer gets smart and says, hey, no, I'm one of you. I'm a good guy. I'm really simplifying this terribly. And then the T cells, the immune system goes away and says, okay, I can ignore that. So the new treatments in immunotherapy help the immune system recognize the cancer as the bad guy and go do your job. And it has been shown to be extremely successful in lung cancer. And in many ways, lung cancer has been leading the way in the immunotherapy treatment throughout all cancers.
Dr. Carbone, what do you think is the most exciting? What's on the horizon? What are we looking at right now in lung cancer research?
Well, we've made amazing progress in the last 10 years, almost doubling the 5-year survival for lung cancer. We're actually seeing people with stage 4 lung cancer living apparently without evidence of disease 5, 6, 7, 8 years later, potentially even cured of their stage 4 disease because of the research that we're doing in lung cancer. But the fact is that it's not everybody. And we need to figure out how to improve the treatments for other people, for the rest of lung cancer patients. And it's really difficult to guess what the next iPhone will be or the next revolution in lung cancer therapy would be. Nope. When I started in research 30 years ago, my first NIH grant was on immunotherapy. And everybody thought that was such a stupid idea. Immunotherapy of lung cancer it was completely ridiculous. And so I think there was only one grant in the study section, so they had to give it to me. But the fact is that now it's taken over, and virtually every lung cancer patient gets immunotherapy. So it's hard to predict, but I really think that we're going to make major progress in improving. Now, I think the yardstick for our success will be improving 5-year survival for metastatic disease, which is something you wouldn't even have thought of 10 years ago.
Can you define metastatic disease for me, please?
That's stage 4. That's when the cancer can't be taken out surgically and can't be confined into a tolerable radiation therapy field so that it's spread to other parts of the body. And unfortunately, most lung cancers are diagnosed in that stage.
Right.
I hope that changes with the CT screening efforts, but CT screening right now is only applied to older smokers. And as we've been talking about, there are many people that get lung cancer who've never touched a cigarette or are younger. We've heard from some of them today.
Absolutely. Kim, we've talked, I know that you were on a group that was looking at nasal swabs. Can you talk a little bit about what we would be doing with nasal swabs and lung cancer?
Well, that goes toward early detection of lung cancer. One of the good news, bad news about lung cancer, I've always said, is that it's asymptomatic. You can have stage 4 lung cancer for a long time and not even know it and be living a wonderful quality of life. So it's really critical that we find ways to detect lung cancer earlier. Right now, the standard is a spiral CT scan. Well, that's expensive, and it's just not something that a 40-year-old healthy, never smoker woman would be told you need to go get that during her annual exam. So if we can come up with an inexpensive way to test for lung cancer, that would be ideal. And there's some direction going in. If you were to go, let's say you had your annual exam and your doctor just took a nasal swab.
Yeah.
And through that, they would be able to detect whether you had lung cancer cells in your body or not. That would be a no-brainer. That would think of how inexpensive and how everybody could have access to something like that. So those are the kind of exciting directions that are going on right now in the field of lung cancer research.
You could get your COVID swab and your lung cancer test at the same time.
There you go.
That's what I was thinking. Dr. Carbone, because funding was so low, why did you decide to become a lung cancer researcher? I mean, why did you go into this?
Well, I have an MD and a PhD, and so I was attracted to genetics. This was, again, 30 years ago, before anybody thought of genetics in lung cancer. And I loved medicine, and there was really no connection between lung cancer genetics and clinical medicine, but I really wanted to attack an important clinical problem, and like lung cancer, and I really wanted to apply what I knew about genetics. And so I heard a lecture by a guy named John Minna talking about recurrent gene mutations in lung cancer. And I said, that's a bad disease, and I'll bet you genetics will help find better treatments. And I was right. And I've been working in lung cancer my entire career.
And for you to see the advances that have happened in the past decade, and especially in the past 5-6 years, what does that mean to you?
It's a totally different feeling. And when I started, most lung cancer patients got no treatment at all.
Right.
They just got pain medications and hand-holding and palliative care. Now, like I said, I can tell patients who are in distress, cancer in every bone in their body. I have a patient that has one of these driver mutations, was a avid horseback rider, but she had cancer literally in every bone in her body and was in terrible pain. And we found the driver and we started treating her. And now she has no evidence of cancer and she's back to horseback riding. You would never, ever see that historically. So it's extremely exciting. It's also exciting,
yes.
if you notice, you will see in the next segment that every single one of the highlighted young researchers are women.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Which
And
is very interesting. We
it's
do fund men. I definitely want to make sure that everybody knows.
I know, but I think it's fantastic that we are able to find talent in these in the young women researchers and fund them and support their careers in lung cancer.
Absolutely. Kim, go back 5, 6, 10 years. What kind of a difference would it have made in your life had this research been around then?
Oh, in my life, it would have had to have been 20 years ago. That's when I lost my husband to lung cancer. He was 45 at diagnosis and 47 when he passed away. And back then, the only options were chemotherapy and radiation, and he was stage 4, so no surgery. So there was nothing. What I find exciting, so David and I have known each other, I don't even know how long now, 16, 17 years I've been doing this. And by the way, David is a rock star in the lung cancer research community, and the entire advocate community loves him and thanks him, David, for everything you do and your support for the advocacy. But I can truly say that I have had a front row seat over the last 16 years of some amazing, miraculous discoveries when there was literally no options for lung cancer. And now there's a plethora of options. I mean, sometimes I just sit back and get a big smile on my face. There's a large cancer research meeting in Chicago, although obviously it didn't happen this year, that we all go to every year. And inevitably, lung cancer was always got the back room where it took you 20 minutes just to walk there, and it was a small room, and barely anybody showed up. And it was maybe 5 or 6 years ago that we went to the conference and we got Hall B. Now that means nothing to most people, but Hall B is the big conference room that seats thousands, and it was standing room only. And I just sat back and went, yes,
yeah,
we've arrived. Absolutely. And that is totally due to the hard work of people like the Carbones and the people you're going to see in the interview that we've funded.
And to you.
To
you, right? Dr. Carbone, isn't that true? Absolutely.
Well, the type of science, let me just interject one thing, is that research has been going on for a long time. But the thing that's changed recently is research in the old days for cancer, we used to scrape fungus off of rocks and grind up tree bark to try to find things that you put on cells in culture that would kill them. Now it's precision science. We understand what makes cancers tick, and we target that specifically. So what works amazingly in one patient won't work at all in another, and we understand to a large degree exactly why that is. And that's the kind of science that LCFA is funding, understanding these Achilles heels, the specific mechanisms that drive cancers that can be targeted in a smart way.
So how many biomarkers are there at this point, and how many have treatment?
A lot. It's, I don't know, I forget how many are in the NCCN guidelines. It's something like 8, but there are many more that we are discovering. And you probably won't find genetic targets in everyone, even if you saw every gene. It's just that some lung cancers are driven by these drivers, and some are driven by immune escape, and some are driven by other things. And so I think we've made major progress in genetically targeted therapies. We're making progress with targeting one pathway in the immune system, but the immune system is complex. There's dozens of pathways, and I think there will be targets and mechanisms that we can't imagine right now that'll be uncovered by future research to apply to more and more patients.
And how important is that? Especially so many of our interviews today talked about either they've been on 1, 2, or 3 different types of therapies. That Tabitha, I think, said, I look at this as I'm a frog jumping from lily pad to lily pad. And I thought that was a great analogy, because they're waiting because the cancer is so smart. And we had another one of our speakers who explained what it's like. Ivy talked about what it's like to have anxiety, because every 3 months she's got to go in, and then I don't care if it's 15 minutes. If you have to go in and wait to find out, am I still healthy or is it back?
Yeah.
Man, that has to really grind on you.
Yeah. Well, I'm a cancer survivor myself, and so I totally understand that. And not only have we discovered targets and drugs for those targets, but we've discovered better drugs for those targets as time's gone on. For ALK targeting, we start out with crizotinib, but it doesn't get into the brain, and many people relapse in the brain. And now alectinib gets into the brain, and other ALK targeting drugs. So we're doing better and better at discovering these drugs, but still, like you described, we're not curing these people in general. That if they live long enough, the cancer will eventually outsmart the drug. So to me, the next thing we need to focus on, now that we've got really quite good drugs, is to figure out how not just to suppress the cancer, but to kill it completely, to cure it. Like they cure lymphoma or leukemia now, you give an intense treatment of multiple drugs for a short period of time, and then you can stop, and they're cured.
Right.
With some leukemias. I think that if we are smart, we will try to figure out exactly what makes those few cells in the body survive the treatment, sometimes for years, and figure out how to specifically kill them, so that you can treat for a period of time and then stop, and the patient will be cured. And we see that with immune therapies. I have multiple patients that have had a complete response with immune therapy, and we stop, and years later, they're completely fine. What we need to do is we need to figure out a way to do that with targeted therapies, with the driver mutant targeted therapies.
Kim, you've been doing this for more than a decade. What do you hope for in the next 5 years? What do you see?
What do I see, or what do I hope for?
Both.
What I hope for is that LCFA will be put out of business because there will be no need for us anymore. Now, I don't think that will happen in 5 years. There's still a huge need out there.
Yeah.
And I just want to see the whole issue of underfunding research.
Yes.
So lung cancer isn't the least funded, but in relation to its impact on public health, it is severely underfunded. And part of that is people just don't realize that it needs research to be funded. So the more we can get things like we are doing today, get the word out that, first off, lung cancer is not a death sentence anymore. You've seen that today, living with lung cancer, all these amazing people coming forward today and sharing their lives with everyone. They're living good quality lives in the sphere of having lung cancer. And I hope people get that message. But in order to keep them continuing to have that good quality of life, we need funding. We need to keep the research going. We need to continue to find the next best researchers, as you'll see in the next segment. And that is just critical. So if we can just get people to understand that and open up their wallets and their hearts, I will be thrilled.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Dr. Carbone, any last thoughts?
No, I'd just like to thank the LCFA and for everything it's done over years and years. It was co-founded by one of my patients, actually, which we haven't discussed, but she was a real fighter who was diagnosed with metastatic lung cancer. And I remember very clearly, she told me on her first clinic visit, I have young kids, I want to see them graduate from high school. And we actually got them through high school, through college, to married. And those kinds of successes really come because of research and people like Kim and the LCFA and their partner ISLC.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you both. Jim, unfortunately, had to jump off, but Jim does a great job as well and is a terrific advocate and lost his father to lung cancer. So I think when you go around and you talk about lung cancer, people are like, oh yeah, this person died in my family or that person died in my family. But now, and there, Jim's almost back. Jim?
He's asleep.
It looks like he's asleep, but he's not. Open those eyes, buddy, and come off the mic. There you go.
I think Sarah. I think Sarah's muting me again. Come on, Sarah.
Are you in? So Jim is on a boat, and apparently things are really rocking over where they are. I'd love to, real quick, Jim, we're coming up to the end, and I'd love to have from you, what is it that you would hope that would happen with lung cancer? What would you like to leave the people who are watching with today?
You know, I think the knowledge that there is such a thing as early detection, that there is access to early detection, like a decade ago, but yeah, I mean, lung cancer needs to be the treatable disease like HIV, right? Where maybe it's not cured, but you can live with it, which is what all of the hashtag living with lung cancer is all about. So that would be my wish.
Great. Well, I want to thank all of you. I know we're all very excited about the next segment as well with Marta Kaufman. So that's going to be fabulous. But I really hope that the people who are watching us get a sense of not only hope, but it's worth investing in this. How important is that? And that we're going to make such a difference. And you can see there, Sarah's just put up the video that we're going to have next. So I'm going to say goodbye to all of you. And I will see you right after the video. Thank you so much for the interviews today. And everybody needs to get out there, open their pocketbooks, as Kim said, and make a donation, because your donation truly matters. You can see that, the people that are living with lung cancer that we've been talking about. So thank you, guys. And we're going to go next to this amazing interview. Now, remember, this is World Lung Cancer Day, and LCFA is doing the social media takeover, and they've already put together $4 million, and they have funded the best and the brightest, and you're about to meet some of them. Not the lady in green in the corner, that would be me, but Marta Kaufman is on the board. You know Marta Kaufman from Friends, from Grace and Frankie. She is the co-creator of these shows. She is an amazing woman, and she is interviewing these fabulous young investigators. She's going to introduce each one of them, so I'm going to go ahead and let her do that. But please know that this is going to be just a fascinating conversation, and you're going to see exactly where LCFA's donations are going and what a tremendous impact you can have. Hi there, I'm Diane Mulligan. I handle the PR for LCFA, Lung Cancer Foundation of America, and man, are you in for a treat today. We are talking today with the Young Investigator Grant Awardees and board member Marta Kaufman. Marta is the co-creator, writer, executive producer, and director of the hit television series Friends and Grace and Frankie, one of my favorites of all time, among many other shows. So welcome, Marta, and we can't wait to get started with this conversation.
Thank you so much. Thank you for asking me to do this. I am so thrilled to be here and be part of this conversation, particularly because I'm joined today by some of the amazing young women investigators who've received grant research funding through the Lung Cancer Foundation of America's Young Investigator Grant Program. And I'm going to say your name, and I'm going to say a little bit about you, and then raise your hand so we know who we're talking about. Triparna Sen works Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center in New York. Dr. Sen's grant research is studying how to boost the body's immune system to target and eliminate small cell lung cancer tumors. Triparna?
Yes, hi. I'm very glad to be here.
We have Alice Berger from the Fred Hutchinson Cancer Research Center in Seattle, Washington. Dr. Berger's grant focus is the genetics of lung cancer in women who have never smoked, who also participated in the Women's Health Initiative of the largest US prevention studies of its kind, involving more than 161,000 women. Alice?
That's right. Thanks so much, Marta. I'm looking forward to talking with all of you today.
Jarushka Naidu from Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine in Baltimore, Maryland. Dr. Naidu's focus is to identify whether a patient's gut microbiome may affect a lung cancer patient's response to a certain type of immunotherapy.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jarushka. It's a pleasure to be here in the company of leaders, both from an advocacy and support as well as an investigator role. We are looking forward to partnering with patients, advocates, funders, and investigators to move the field of lung cancer forward, and I am privileged to be a part of that.
Thank you. And we have Christine Lovely from the Vanderbilt Ingram Cancer Center in Nashville, Tennessee. Dr. Lovely's grants research is also on small cell lung cancer and focuses on early detection and the need to develop novel diagnostic and treatment strategies for patients with this disease.
Hi, everyone. It's really a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much to everybody who's listening in and taking some time during this very busy, hectic, and challenging time to really support and advocate for all lung cancer patients.
Thank you. Thank you. So as I'm sure everybody can tell, we have an amazing group of researchers and clinicians who have dedicated their professional lives to finding better treatments for lung cancer. So I have to ask you all, what drew you into the field of specifically studying lung cancer? Alice, do you want to start?
Sure, I'd love to. Yeah, so for me, I got interested in science from really just a curiosity-driven way. I just love to learn. And so as my school went on, I just kept asking more and more questions. So you get to the point of, well, there's no answer for that yet. We don't know. And as I got interested in biology, as I worked in a immunology lab after graduating with a degree in chemistry, I learned about cancer biology, and I started to get this idea that it was really important to me, if I wanted to dedicate my life to science, that I wanted to be able to see like a real world impact of that science in my lifetime, ideally. And cancer just was a really fascinating way to do that, because it's a huge burden on our society. And it also, in studying it, will hopefully tell us something about what normal physiology is as well. So in understanding how cancer has messed up our cells, how can we understand what it normally should be? I also will say that my grandfather died of lung cancer. However, he died before I was born. So it's a real loss to our family. And I know my dad has talked a lot about how that affected him when he was in college, when his father passed away. And for me, I didn't even know him. So it's a big void in that way. So I do have a personal connection, but it's really both of those things that drew me into lung cancer research.
Thank you. Just so you know, my grandfather died of lung cancer as well, and I did know him. So I understand. I totally understand. Triparna?
Thank you.
Yeah, I was initiated to cancer research very early in my life. My father's an oncologist back in India, so every dinner table conversation and breakfast conversation, I used to hear about the disease that's really deadly. And whenever he used to have the opportunity to send a patient along the path of recovery, I used to see this sense of purpose in him. And I kind of wanted that. I wanted to be in a profession where I could like get up every morning with a sense of purpose, that I get to serve, my research, my work needs to make a difference. So I was interested in cancer research maybe from my school time. But the fact that I took up lung cancer research came much later. And I do have a personal connection. I lost a family member to lung cancer. And when I was doing my PhD, I learned about the disease. I learned how much we do not know about lung cancer, how much we do not know about the biology, how many patients, in spite of it being the largest killer, how many patients we are not even able to save. So I think that is the point when I thought that this is a disease that needs immediate attention, and I really wanted to contribute to that. So I would say it's a very personal connection that I have, and I'm really glad that I'm doing what I'm doing, because every day I get to feel like I'm making a difference, and it's a very gratifying job.
Thank you. Sharushka?
Yeah, so I think I was drawn to oncology and lung cancer for similar reasons as Alison Triparna. So I think clinically, I think first and foremost, if you meet most lung cancer physicians, we are very clinical at heart, because I think most of us understand that patients with lung cancer tend to be very unwell or present initially with more advanced stages of lung cancer. So most of us are very seasoned clinicians, and a lot of our drive to innovate in lung cancer is rooted in these patient stories. People who might be very young or who might present very symptomatically, and the need to innovate and do things that will help people expeditiously. And I think that's particularly poignant in patients with lung cancer who tend to be a more unwell patient population. I think the second thing, which is maybe not unique to lung cancer, but definitely a part of oncology, is we are very much a team sport. We in medical oncology, I think, are the quarterback of the team, coordinating, between medical oncology, radiation oncology, surgery, palliative care, and of course the patient themselves is in the middle of that team. And I personally find the whole process of looking after a patient who has these varied needs very energizing and very fulfilling. And working with others and working in a team structure to help a patient is something that is rooted in lung cancer therapy, and certainly related to my research, where we're even now involving specialists in other specialties, in infectious diseases and immunology. So our team is growing. And I think it's actually a very exciting time to be part of the lung cancer community.
Thank you. Christine?
So I too had a grandparent who died of lung cancer, and I did not know her either. And I think having a personal connection, and the number of people who have a personal connection, really speaks to just how prevalent lung cancer is. More than 235,000 Americans every single year. This is a disease that we need to tackle from multiple perspectives and have an all hands on deck approach for sure. Cannot have enough smart, dedicated people studying lung cancer. I'm going to put a little bit of a different spin on it though. So I grew up in New York and moved to the South and love living here in Nashville. I think in my area of the country, in Southeast, we have the highest prevalence of lung cancer. We have the worst outcomes from lung cancer. And so patients here, there's all sorts of disparities, male-female disparities, rural-urban disparities, race and ethnic disparities. And as we advance science, we want to make sure that every lung cancer patient, whether they're living in New York City or San Francisco or Nashville or Alaska, has access to the latest, greatest treatment for lung cancer.
Thank you. Thank you all so much. So unfortunately, we know that lung cancer is the #1 cancer killer of women. That's correct. I'm correct about that, yes? And that the lung cancer death rate, while it's falling for men, is actually increasing in young non-smoking women. I have a couple of questions for that, but primarily, you are all young women. Do you feel a connection with those women lung cancer patients, many of whom are your age and have families like you do? How does that affect your work?
Yeah, I can start, I guess. Absolutely, I do. I think, I'm 38, and as I get older, and get further from those college days, I think you increasingly feel your mortality as you have friends and family that have faced, different challenges, whether it's cancer or other chronic illnesses. And so I definitely have a sense of it could be me at any time, as well as just empathy for being in the same, situation. I can't imagine facing that with my family and my children who are 9, 7, and 3 right now. And so absolutely, that makes me want to fight harder and prevent anyone from dying with lung cancer.
Yeah, I think I'll second that. I think we all understand the urgency that comes with a diagnosis of lung cancer. It is always particularly poignant when there are parallels between you and your patients, whether it be related to your race, your gender, your age, but any patient, regardless of their age, their smoking status, any of those factors is important to us and speaks to us in some way. And I think that sense of urgency is also driven by the fact that we all understand there is so much room for improvement in lung cancer. There are so many ways we can understand this a little bit better. I think, one of the great points you touched on is, we now understand that there is so many differences in the biology of lung cancer that have helped us to bring these advances to our patients. And I think advancing that will help us to deal with that sense of urgency for our young patients, our older patients, our female patients, our male patients, as Christine said, to attend to all of those disparities and hopefully improve outcomes for everybody.
So while I don't see patients in the clinic, I get the clinical reports when I'm collecting samples for my research. And every time I see a young woman, it is a pit in my stomach because I can relate. I can relate to what her family must be going through. And I have met in fundraisers or in outreach events, I have met young patients with lung cancer. And it is heartbreaking because it is always heartbreaking to see a cancer patient. But when you see young patients suffering the way they do in lung cancer, it really kind of makes you want to go back to lab and probably just start working. I mean, I have often felt that I have to do something better. I have to push myself out of comfort zone when I see these young patients, especially women, because I feel a sense of connection to them with lung cancer. And it's growing, as you said, the percentage is growing. I work with small cell lung cancer, which is usually seen in older patients, but every now and then we do see patients who are younger in age, and then it has a very small time frame through which the diagnosis happens and when the patient is deceased. So that it kind of gives you that sense of urgency that you really need to do something now, really need to do something fast. And as I said, as Christine said, it's like an all hands on deck approach. And I think it is one of the biggest driving factors for me.
Just add as the last point, when you see a young female with lung cancer, that's not what 99.999% of people think of someone who is supposed to have lung cancer. And it really drives the message home that anybody can have lung cancer. And it really drives the message home that nobody deserves lung cancer no matter what. And that this is a disease in which the stigma is tremendous. And we all need to have more empathy for our patients. And so I think, of course, as young females, we identify with young females, but part of that is also just trying to really connect with people who need support and empathy, and offer not just prescriptions and great therapies, but also kindness and support and everything to, this is not an easy journey for anybody or their family members. So I think to Jerusa's point before, the lung cancer community is blessed in that it is a very tight-knit community, and we all know each other, we work together, and we share patients, and that's what we need. It will, like, all hands on deck, no doubt about it.
So I have a question. I can't imagine that yours is a 9-to-5 kind of job. I can't imagine that clinical work research is on a timetable. How do you balance your work and your life?
So I'll start. So I see patients in clinic, and I also run a research laboratory. So I train students and postdocs to study lung cancer. And that's what I wanted to do since I was 16 years old, and I just turned 45 this month. And so something for more than 30 years, thank you, Druska, that I've been really excited about. I think you work hard because you love your work, and you love the people you're working with, and you love your patients, period. And you figure out ways to make it work. And you have to keep figuring out ways to make it work because life changes. Nobody thought we'd be in a pandemic situation this year, but we are. Lung cancer doesn't stop because of the pandemic. We just need to find other ways to study lung cancer, to treat our patients. And so from my perspective, there's not a magic answer to this question. How do you make it work? You just make it work because you want to make it work, period.
Thank you, Christina. And thank you for mentioning, that lung cancer hasn't stopped just because of the pandemic, because I get asked, including from my daughters, hey, Mom, don't you think you should switch to COVID now and study COVID? And, you've seen some scientists who are contributing, the skills that they can have to the pandemic, which is incredibly important. But my answer has always been, I think I have a full plate until lung cancer is cured. And so I want, especially as a young investigator, I want to remain focused kind of on my research program right now and those goals, so I don't get distracted and, spread myself too thin. So I guess staying focused then could count as one way I kind of try to find this balance. And then the other thing is, being a cancer biologist, it is all encompassing. I, work at odd hours and write grants or come into the lab sometimes still to do experiments or troubleshoot things with my trainee. But it's also very flexible. And so I've been able to thankfully, fit that around my family life, particularly in the pandemic, where I might now have to spend some time with my children, homeschooling them during the day, but I can fit in extra hours on the weekend or at our convenience, around that. And so, there's no magic answer. It's just day by day, and attending to the most critical priorities at any given day.
As my previous Alice and Christine pointed out, lung cancer research is all-consuming. It is definitely not a 9-to-5 job. Either you are doing the work or you're thinking about it. So it is definitely not a 9-to-5. How I see it is everybody has their boundaries, and I have over the years set very healthy boundaries that I follow. I have very supportive family and friends. So what I do is I schedule my downtime as meticulously as I schedule my work time. So if I ever feel like I'm getting overwhelmed or if there is a burnout, I take a step back, because I've learned over the years, if I'm not operating at 100%, I'm of no use to my team. So I definitely schedule downtime. I love painting, so that's something I do. So I go back to like making 1 or 2 paintings a week. That's sort of the way I recuperate. I'm also involved in a lot of female leadership program with Association for Women in Science, 500 women scientists of the New York Quad. So that's also my way of like mentoring and bringing up the next generation. That's sort of something I do other than research, which is still related to what I'm passionate about, but I'm not thinking about actively about lung cancer. So I think that has helped me over the years to setting these very good boundaries that I need to go back and forth. And the key is for me is to be 100% present where I am. If I'm in the lab, you can't pull me out. But if I'm vacationing, I am vacationing. So I guess that has helped me over the years to keep this healthy boundaries going. And I hope to keep this up as I get busier and busier in my life.
I think that's, everybody has said some very important messages here. And I agree, this isn't a 9-to-5 job. And one of the reasons, that I think we're all able to do this regardless is because we have a passion for our work and we don't really count work as work. I know sometimes my husband kind of says to me, will you please stop studying? You're always studying, you're reading this and and I keep sort of saying to him, well, I'm not really studying, I'm sort of tipping away at something. I'm reading an abstract because this is fun to me. I'm reading and I'm learning and I'm growing and I don't count it as work. And I think a lot of us can subscribe to that, and that helps us to deal with the fact that there isn't a strict 9-to-5. I think the other factor that Trapana brought up is the importance of family and the importance of delegation. I think particularly as women, sometimes we feel that we need to do everything. We need to be everywhere at every single time. But like oncology, life is a team sport. And we need to respect our partners, respect our family and the roles that they play and delegate to them because they can do it just as well as we can. And bringing them in actually strengthens the team. And then I think the last thing I would say is that we need to also create balance in our lives. So I'm also a Pilates teacher and I teach Pilates once a week. And I think that gives me a mental break and helps to sort of develop another side that is, both self-fulfilling for me as well as taking us away from maybe the emotional side of looking after patients who have a lot of physical and emotional needs. So I think investing in ourselves as people is also very important to creating that sense of balance.
Thank you. So I'm curious about how funding like LCFA's Young Investigator Grants helps launch your research careers into hopefully lifelong contributions to better lung cancer treatments and maybe one day a cure.
I can take this one. So we all know that lung cancer is the largest cancer killer in the world. However, with government funding, it's only about 2% of government funding goes to lung cancer research, which I think should definitely improve over the years. And I study small cell lung cancer, which is the most aggressive form of lung cancer. It causes about deaths of 30,000 Americans per year. And it only has a very, it's very underfunded. Let me just say that. So organizations like LCFA and their funding has really helped me. I want to study how I can reactivate the immune system in small cell lung cancer and how that can make immunotherapy better, which is not doing so well for small cell lung cancer patients. So this initial funding will help me get some key data that I then need to prove my hypothesis, to build upon that and help clinicians who are in the clinic to design their clinical trials better, because the biomarkers and the therapies that I show in my preclinical models will help the clinicians guide their clinical trials. So I think these initial funding will really go a long way personally in my career, in my research, in getting those key initial data that will then, upon which I can build bigger projects, better projects, which unfortunately may not be funded otherwise from our conventional government funding system. So I'm really thankful to LCFA for having these Young Investigator Award system.
Can I piggyback on that and say, with respect to federal funding, what you don't realize until you start writing federal grants is that from the time you write it to the time it gets funded, maybe, and about the National Cancer Institute funding cutoff is 8th percentile, around 8th percentile. So it means 8 out of 100 grants get funded. So not only is the funding line very low, but it also takes at least a year from the time you submit a grant to the time it's reviewed, to the time it's reviewed again. So I think funding from organizations like LCFA helps us to build critical foundations to advance our work while we're also broadening our grant repertoire with federal grants. So foundation grants from LCFA and federal grants are absolutely complementary and could not do without either one of them.
I agree. I think funding is and receiving a grant is kind of the first. It's the first rung on your career ladder. It's what gets you started. It's your foundation, and it's not just your foundation to doing your work, but it also opens up a access to a group of investigators, such as the people who are on the call today, who become your network and who become people who you can sound ideas off and actually bolster your career forward. So while writing manuscripts, looking after patients, writing trials, these are all essential parts of our job. Funding is kind of the silent foundation on which all of that is based, and without which none of us would actually have a career with longevity. So I think thank you so much to LCFA for all the support, and particularly for supporting young investigators, because it's people like us who find it the most difficult to get started. And this is the time that I think funding is potentially the most critical.
Yeah, and I can just add on, I mean, I believe, I have to go back and double check, but I believe my LCFA Young Investigator Research Award was actually the first grant that I got when I started my position here at the Hutch, the first foundation grant. And it's for this project where we're sequencing lung tumors from women who have never smoked that participated in the Women's Health Initiative. And it grew out of a really serendipitous interaction when I arrived at the Hutch and met Garnet Anderson, who's the PI of the Women's Health Initiative. And we realized what a resource this could be for lung cancer research that hadn't really fully been tapped into for that use. And so I got super excited, oh yeah, we're going to sequence all these cases and we're going to learn all these new things about lung cancer. And then, you start thinking, well, shoot, how am I going to fund this? And sequencing gets really expensive really quickly. And the NIH does not want to pay for a lot of sequencing. They want you to magically have the data and then make some biological insights that you're then going to follow up on and form hypotheses to validate. And so I started writing like crazy, and I am so thrilled to have gotten this award from the LCFA because we were able to initiate the study from there and use some of the preliminary data to actually receive other awards, one internally and one other foundation award, to finally get the full amount needed to sequence all of these women's tumors. So I'm just so grateful for the support from LCFA.
Thank you. So 10 of the last 14 LCFA Young Investigator Research Grants have gone to young women investigators. But I think when many of us, certainly of a certain generation, think about what a scientist looks like or a medical researcher looks like, it probably isn't a woman, and it probably isn't a person of color. So I'm curious who your role models were and who were your mentors and supporters.
I think I can take that one. So I have an interesting trajectory. So I'm ethnically Indian, but I grew up in South Africa. It's the second largest population of Indian people outside of India. And then I won a full scholarship to go to medical school in the Republic of Ireland. Try to find a place more Caucasian in the world, and that you'll have trouble other than Ireland. But I have to say, despite that, the culture is extremely welcoming and extremely supportive of bright and eager minds, no matter what they look like and where they come from. And through my work there, I obtained a scholarship to do my fellowship with Trapana Works at Memorial Sloan Kettering, and now I work at Johns Hopkins. So in Ireland, I had a very traditional mentorship group, mainly senior men, but you know, very much he for she senior men who were invested in the growth of dynamic individuals, no matter where they came from, and that is something that I think is very important to how we think about things. The second thing I would say, or the second part of the story, is at Johns Hopkins. So my boss is Julie Bramer. She's a young, dynamic guru of immunotherapy. And she, along with Liz Jaffe, who's the former president of the AACR, are my principal mentors and the heads of my mentorship committee. So the feeling is very much girl power in lung cancer, I have to say. And there is a lot of girl power in lung cancer. So I think, you know, most folks that you speak with, they have a variety of mentors through their career, but I feel that definitely there is a surge of women in science and a real focus on developing young women, and there are emerging women leaders, many of whom are supporting our growth. And I personally would like to thank them, because they have served as role models, but equally there are many senior men that have served as role models for me as well, and they also need to be acknowledged. So mentorship comes in various shapes and sizes, and I'm very fortunate to have benefited from much of that.
I can add to that. So I was born and brought up in India, and I can tell you the amount of times my identity as a woman has been held against me. So it has been a very long journey. So I will divide my question into two parts. It's a personal inspiration. So I love what I do. I absolutely love what I do. And I guess a lot of the driving force comes from, if you really love what you do, I think no hurdle is big enough. And I consider myself to be spiritual, so I have a lot of faith in myself. So I had hurdles where my entire identity as a woman was considered like as a drawback for me, but I did overcome all those because I loved all that. And then I moved to the United States about 7 years ago. So now there is a question of not only being a woman of color, but also being an immigrant. So there's an extra layer of complexity that it adds to everything. Grants you can apply for. You just have to get used to the culture and everything. But I would say that what got me through is having mentors, as Jeriska was saying, strong female role models, and also your peer group of women who are not competitive, who are ready to, be your support group. I think it's very important that your peers you choose your peers well, and you have that support group where you kind of bring each other up. I cannot say enough about how much I'm thankful to the mentors I've had. My postdoctoral mentor, who was an MD Anderson, she was a woman herself. She had 2 kids, but I saw her do it all, and I felt like, I could do everything as well. And you really can, actually, it is not easy, but it really is possible. So I think having good mentors, having a strong support group, and above all, having that courage and compassion that you need to go forward. I think that really goes a long way when you have these complexities in your path.
Yeah, I'll just say, like Jarushka, strangely, or maybe not strangely, most of my early mentors in my career were all men. But the reason I say strangely is because I didn't really think about that at that time in my career. And I was raised from my parents to believe that I could do whatever I wanted to do. So I always had, that kind of in my mind. But I think as I got older and closer to, getting married and having kids, you do start to wonder, am I going to be able to do all of this? And I actually didn't have a female mentor until my postdoc, who was not my primary mentor, but I joined a mentorship program where they would match you with like another mentor for whatever your purposes were. In my case, it was to look for an academic career. And it was so helpful to have her perspective. And she didn't have kids herself, but she made me think about how to best, kind of strategize about my upcoming maternity leave, the kinds of things I could advocate for myself in my lab at that time that I don't think I would have ever thought of or gotten from a male mentor. So I would just encourage, if there are any young women who are seeing this to, seek out those female mentors. If you don't have them in your in the traditional sense, that's fine. I learned so much from the male mentors that I had, many of which had their own families and were mentors in that kind of work-life balance sense as well. But seek them out. There's not one form of mentorship. You can find them through organized programs, through informal interactions. And so, go out and find those women that can help you and guide you.
Well, anything, like our other panelists, I've had many mentors over my training, which has spanned more than 2 decades to go through college, medical school, graduate school, internship, residency, clinical fellowship, and postdoctoral fellowship. And my dad used to joke, you're going to retire by the time you're done with your training. I think, like Alice said, there is no one form of mentorship. There's no one mentor. And a part of mentorship that I really want to mention is reverse mentorship also, in that we learn all the time from people who are maybe a step below us in training. And I have many mentors who are technically below me in terms of their education path, but who remind me about work-life balance, or who teach me new things that I didn't know because that wasn't part of my training or it hadn't been discovered yet. And so mentorship comes in all forms, from all different faces and from all different ages as well. And mentors can be people who are younger than you as well.
Right. That's great. Thank you. So many of you have been incredibly generous with your time to partner with LCFA Speakers Bureau, members on the Hope with Answers video series, or the Hope with Answers Living with Lung Cancer podcast. Why is it inspiring and important to work directly with people who are living with lung cancer on these types of outreach projects?
Sorry. Oh,
Go ahead, Chaparna.
Oh, I can start. I'll say it because unlike other people on the call, I don't see patients. So I think these are incredibly important to me, because when you're in the lab and you're doing preclinical studies with your cell lines and with your mice, you can get really cooped up in the science that you're doing in those preclinical models. So I guess meeting people living with lung cancer it's a reminder that the work that you do has a direct effect, not only on the people, on the patients, but also on their families. It gives you a sense of purpose. It gives you a sense of direction and urgency. You want your work to go into the clinic to help clinicians like Jeruska, like Christine, to really take their work forward. You want to help them so that they can in turn help the patients. So I think these interactions are incredibly useful because it gives you sort of a sense of direction and purpose. And it's a two-way way as well, because when we speak, the patients and the funding agencies and the families, they can also understand the work that we do and why is it important, because we often want patients to contribute their tissues or their blood in the clinical trial. So unless and until they understand why you're doing what you're doing, they're unlikely to contribute to your research. So I think these events are it's a two-way traffic, and it's incredibly important that these continue. And I'm very happy to contribute.
I'll say, I think interacting with the patients also just brings such tremendous hope. As you saw when we started this forum, almost everybody on this call has a personal connection of lung cancer, and that's not unique to the people on this call. If you're out there and you're watching, you have a personal connection to lung cancer. And I think putting a face behind it and saying that it's okay to talk about this, we should talk about it, we should bring awareness and hope that people are surviving with lung cancer. Because listen, in all of our lifetimes, it wasn't that long ago where patients were said, you have lung cancer, just go home and we'll send hospice to your house. And now we have chemotherapy, we have targeted therapies, we have immunotherapy, we have early detection, we have liquid biopsies. That's amazing. We still have a long way to go. And I think having this joint ventures with patients and physicians and researchers talking about where are we and where we need to go just brings a continued voice to this deadly disease that has not had a voice until very recently.
Yeah, I'll just say I'm also a basic scientist, actually, like Triparna, so I don't see patients. And, you know, we're in the lab all the time, or writing grants, trying to figure out how we can make that next discovery. And let me tell you, it can be discouraging. It's hard, right? The reason there's no, you know, magic cure for all of lung cancer right now is because it's really hard. And that's sometimes one message I want the lay public to get. And that's why we're also working so hard and so passionate about it. And so you can get discouraged. But when you meet a patient who has benefited from one of these advances, you know, that you may have been a part of, you know, a small part of, I was part of the kind of characterization of MET splicing mutations as part of this huge consortium, the Cancer Genome Atlas Project. And later I shadowed a physician at Mass General Hospital and actually got to meet a patient that had been on MET targeted therapies. I mean, that was so incredibly motivating. And there's, you know, no way I could have matched that level of enthusiasm without interacting with someone who's actually benefiting from those therapies. And now I've been able to actually see that kind of the next level of that as a PI now running my lab, because I have a graduate student who was initially interested in more like really basic genetics, like, you know, really far from advancement into patients. And she actually had the opportunity to meet with one of the patient advocates, Janet Freeman Daly, who I met through my interactions with LCFA. And actually that has inspired my graduate student to think about dedicating her career to lung cancer as well. So that really just filled my heart with joy to hear that. And it's really exciting to see how these patient advocates are impacting the next generation of scientists as well.
I think the last thing I would add to that is, you know, as a clinical researcher or a translational researcher, we talk about bench to bedside or bedside back to the bench discoveries, but interacting with patients doesn't necessarily just have to happen at the bedside. So these interactions with patients are seminal to the work we do. As a clinical researcher, I have to be honest, the patients give me the questions. So if you listen closely enough, the patients are actually telling you what the next research questions are. So for example, a lot of my research is in immunotherapy and in the side effects of immunotherapy. And the very first patient I saw during my fellowship at Memorial Sloan Kettering developed inflammation of the lungs as a side effect of immunotherapy, pneumonitis. And that initial interaction has spawned over 15 publications that I've worked on because it lives with me. The questions that they ask, why did I develop this? Are there certain things that make my pneumonitis worse than others? Is it to do with my CAT scan? Is it to do with my shortness of breath? And at the time, I recognized that these were all open questions. And remembering that conversation is like a checklist of all of the publications that I've worked on. So I think a lot of our interactions with patients, whether we are clinical researchers or bench researchers, are rooted in the stories of patients. And all of us working with an organization such as yours is integral to their stories as well as our stories.
I have one last question for you all. What would you say to young girls? How would you encourage them to get involved in science?
I'll take that. Best job in the world. I mean, go science. It's the best job in the world. I mean, you will get up every morning happy. And how many people in any other job can say that with confidence? I think everyone on this call, whether your paper is not getting published, whether your grant just did not get funded, it does not matter, because your work matters. And that's something, that's a feeling no one can take away from you. There will be failures. There will be a grant that did not get funded. There will be a paper that got a rejection. Does not matter, because you get to do all this awesome job every day. So please, and one last thing I would say is always approach any profession with compassion and with courage. And I keep saying that because it has been sort of the mantra of my life, is approach anything that you have with courage and compassion, and have that sense of worthiness, because it will go a long way, because failures is just a part of any profession. You just can't do without it. But if you attach too much value to that day-to-day failure, like an experiment going wrong or something happening, you would have a tough time in any profession, especially in science, because a lot of the work that we do is very hypothesis driven. So have that sense of worthiness, that confidence, and go. It's the best job in the world. I'm sorry, but I got so excited.
How passionate you are about it.
I know. I don't think there's anything I can add to that, really. I mean, I'm, inspired by your words, Triparna. And I would just say, on a practical note, see if you can talk to your teachers or professors, depending on what level you're at, and find opportunities to go and work in a lab or shadow someone in a lab for a day. Shadow a doctor, see what it's like, see what their experiences are, and talk to them firsthand. And that's a great way to get started.
I will say to all the young girls out there, and I imagine that every one of us on this call right now has gone through a period of time where we doubted ourselves, no matter what we wanted to do, and doubted, I can't do it because I don't look a certain way, or I'm not smart enough, or I don't have the right family or the right education. Toss that out the window. You can do whatever you want. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you look like. It doesn't matter where you live. You can make it happen. And really, Parna hit the nail on the head. There is no more amazing job. I see patients in one floor and go 6 floors up and work with my students in my laboratory. And it's amazing because you can see the science in action and then deliver it to your patients. And I would say connecting science and medicine in a translational way really balances out some of the science is a marathon, and problems are solved over years. Medicine is a little bit of a sprint, and you help patients without writing prescriptions. You help them by listening to them and being present and showing empathy and support. And there's just no more rewarding thing you can do.
Yeah, I have very little to add to that, but I think, as Marta said, it's about passion. And, if science is your passion, no matter who you are, pursue it. And I would say that to every young woman or, young male out there, that if this is something that you truly love and is your passion, go for it. I think the two other things that I would sort of advise maybe a young woman coming up in science or a young person coming up in science is know who you are, know what your strengths are, who you are as a person, what gets you up in the morning, what makes you tick, what gets you excited. Because a lot of the time you may have, peers or other mentors who you can learn from, but maybe excited by slightly different things. And that's okay, because you can learn from them, but also follow your path and try to craft your path from there. And then I think the last thing I'd say is build your team. And that it's not sort of you against the world, even though sometimes it might feel like that. We all need our our group to support us, and so identify the people around you, whether they be mentors, whether they be friends, family members, the people that are going to help you and smooth the path forward, because they will become so important to you as you go forward.
Well, doctors, I want to thank you so very much for your thoughtful and passionate and fascinating answers. And I really appreciate you all, you bunch of underachievers. And just thank you.
Marta, they're just like
Thank
the
you,
most
Marta.
inspiring women, aren't they? I mean, I could sit here and listen to them all day. I'll say. Right, it was great. What a wonderful conversation. Thank you all from LCFA to all the young investigators, and a special thanks to Marta Kaufman for hosting this. We really, really appreciate it. We want you to remember that if you have lungs, you can get lung cancer, but that we have people who are now living with lung cancer, and that's what this whole day has been about. And when you see the passion, you have to feel inspired that we can really make a difference. And while, yes, we're still working on funding because it's so low for lung cancer, the fact of the matter is that these women show you where we're going, and that more advances have been made in the past 5 years than in the past decades. It's just amazing. And so we really hope that you're inspired as well. And we hope you'd enjoyed this conversation as much as we have, because it's been great. So thank you, everybody. I just have to say to you, it's been amazing. Remember, we have been on since 4 a.m. Eastern, I think. And we're going to continue on Twitter and on Instagram. These women that you were just watching are going to have a Twitter chat, which is phenomenal. Kim, it's been a phenomenal day. But if anybody is thinking about should I or shouldn't I donate, I'm sorry. You need to write a check. You need to call. David Sturgis, how are you? Co-founder of LCFA, along with Kim Norris. We're here for the last 10 minutes of the Facebook Live. I just want to say it's been such an honor to meet everyone.
Well, thank you. I'm happy to be here.
So there's one person who's not here. I'd like, David, I'd like you to talk about Lori Monroe for a minute, would you?
Lori Monroe was a nurse in Kentucky, diagnosed with lung cancer at a very, very young age, in her early 40s. Like many diagnoses, by chance, she had been hospitalized for something else and then was advised, well, your big problem is lung cancer. And Lori went on to take on lung cancer as her mission, not only for herself, but for all the other people and their families and their friends who were affected by lung cancer. And she became very active in patient advocacy, pressing home the importance of patient advocacy, not only within what I'll call the lung cancer community, but meaning the patients and their families, but to the medical field as well, telling doctors, telling researchers, we need to be involved. We are an important part of this. And I think that your young investigators just corroborated what Lori
absolutely
campaigned for all of those years. And she was incredibly instrumental in bringing some wonderful dynamic changes to lung cancer research. She was not only a patient advocate, but she also participated in clinical trials and became a huge advocate for clinical trials and helping people understand what it is and why it's important to you and why it's important to lung cancer research.
Absolutely. So David is a 2-time lung cancer patient, and prostate cancer you have survived as well. You are, as far as I'm concerned, the $6 million man. And Kim, what you've done has been amazing. But 12 years ago, when you started all of this with David and Lori, could you ever have imagined we would have come this far?
No, never thought about it. We just did it. David, Lori, and I hooked up probably, 15, 16 years ago?
Yes.
We all came from different places. We all had a different path of getting here. But we all had the three of us had a mutual goal, and that was funding research. And when we finally gave up going to the Hill, to DC, trying to get money from them, it was just too hard. We decided to start our own foundation and with our primary mission of funding research. You know, bringing Lori up, I just can't help but think she's smiling hugely today, watching all of this. She, to me, was the ultimate advocate. She fought for everybody, not just herself, for everybody. But she had the ear of the researchers and the medical community. When she spoke, they listened. And she could, in that beautiful Southern charm that she had, she could say things that most people couldn't get away with. And she was just incredible. Every day I miss her, but every day LCFA is what it is today because of Lori.
And if you just watch those young investigators, that's what it's all about. That was your dream, was to get the best and the brightest, to be going after, researching, trying to figure out the next thing for lung cancer. And if you've watched it all today, you've seen these amazing patient advocates who've talked about things They want to see their children grow up. And now they're seeing them. That's the amazing thing, is that, and for some of them, it's by taking a pill. For other ones, it's chemo and radiation and other treatments. But the fact of the matter is that there is hope. There is absolutely hope for living with lung cancer. And it's your dollars that are going to make the difference for us to be able to fund these amazing best and brightest researchers to get to that next step, whether it's early diagnosis or whether it's the next treatment that's going to extend the life of somebody you know and love who's been on treatments, but the cancer got smarter than the treatments. Is that about right?
Yeah, that is absolutely true. And David, I don't know about you, but after watching that interview, not that I wasn't before, but I am so proud of the investigators that we have funded and the contributions they are making and they are going to make. And we couldn't do it without your support. I mean, I said this before, we need you to open up your heart and your pocketbooks to continue this. You've seen people living with lung cancer all day long, and we need to keep them living. And the only way we can do that is through research. And we need your help to make that happen.
You can't expect that I would disagree with what each of you have said. I thoroughly endorse it. I would go on to say that there are two things that I talk about, and Kim has heard them many times, but there are two cores to any talk that I give about lung cancer, about my role in the foundation. And the first part of it right now, it takes off from the fact that I was first diagnosed with lung cancer 18 years ago. In Hebrew, the word for life is closely related to the symbol 18. So 18 years out, I have to say that, yes, I am profoundly lucky to be here to talk to everybody about lung cancer research, the importance of funding lung cancer research, but also to emphasize that luck should not be the calculus. Absolutely. Rather, research is what is required. Money to support that research is critical to finding additional diagnostic tools, treatment modalities, and hopefully someday a cure for lung cancer. And there's one other thing and there were so many thoughtful and impactful messages today, all of which were threaded through with hope. And for that, I thank everybody that participated. And I have often said this, and I say this to the researchers in particular, and my thanks to them. And it's from a Cole Porter song from many, many years ago. And it's titled Experiment. And it says, one of the verses says, do what all good scientists do, experiment. And make it your motto, day and night, experiment. And it will lead you to the light, as the apple on the tree is never too high. And I look upon that as to what LCFA is doing and what it's encouraging its researchers and its patient advocates, its speakers bureau, all seem to be coming together on that same theme.
That's a beautiful sentiment to end on. Remember that we're going to be on Twitter and we're going to be on Instagram for another, I think, 4 more hours. But this day is over. If you haven't texted to make a donation, do it now to Lung for the number 4 ever, and text 4144. Text Lung Forever 41444. Just remember the 4 because we want it Lungs Forever. Or you can click the donate button. Please do it. It's making such a difference. We were so honored to work with you today. And we want to thank everybody who's been watching. We want to thank all of our Speakers Bureau members. We want to thank the doctors who came on, the young investigators who came on. It's been a fabulous day. And we look forward to seeing you again very, very soon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
And thanks to everybody.